Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Hi, this is Rhit Moore, a member of Fort Worth 148. I'd like to welcome you back to our podcast. Today I wanted to read a oration from the Grand Lodge proceedings from 1911 when P Lightfoot was the Grand Orator that year. He later became our Grand Master in 1915. But his oration in that Grand Lodge in 1911 is something that I read as a young Mason when I first joined, and it was really inspiring to me, and I wanted to make it a little more available by adding it to this podcast. So, the address of the Grand Orator was entitled The Lost Word, and here we go. The fact that for so many generations the craft have struggled and toiled in the shadow of the truth, and not in the full radiance of its light, persuaded me to select for this occasion a subject entitled The Lost Word. The terrible tragedy of the temple deprived the craft of its most cherished hope, and for ages we have groped in the semi-darkness. How much of grief and sorrow mankind would have been saved if it had possessed the glorious lights of eternal truth can only be surmised. As we look upon the world in which we live, amid all that is beautiful, buoyant, and engaging, we see that it is a sorely troubled world, a world rent and torn by tragic catastrophes and fierce inward conflicts. Here, sorrow tracks close on the flying feet of joy, a word where no assembly of people may gather, but there are faces marred by pain and brows whitened by the touch of age. Despite the beauty that clothes it like a garment and the splendors that crown it like a diadem, the earth is full of shipwrecks, griefs, and graves. We build the world of today upon the ruins of the world of yesterday, and the feet of the living find no pavement safe upon the dust of the dead. Is there no means to discover the hidden mystery? Let us again search the mystic temple for the priceless treasure. Surely it must be hidden somewhere. The fundamental principle underlying the Masonic fraternity is a belief in the existence of God, the brotherhood of man, and the immortality of the soul. The supreme object of speculative Masonry is to inculcate these truths, for in them lie the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, of human progress, civilization, and destiny. It is upon this broad and universal basis that the great Masonic edifice has laid its foundation, upon which is being reared in wisdom, strength, and beauty, its symmetrical walls and its splendid courts. Within the glorious courts of such a temple, the just of all the nations are gathering, and upon its royal altars burns the glorious lights of liberty, equality, justice, and truth. It is our duty to make Freemasonry the object of a profound study. Those who do so will see it in a grand series of moral and philosophical dramas, most eloquent and instructive, gleaming with sublime ideas, as the heavens glow with stars, and finally shall discern that our right embraces all the possible circumstances of man, moral, spiritual, social, and have a meaning as high as heaven, as broad as the universe, and as profound as eternity. The construction of the beautiful Temple of Solomon furnishes an instructive symbol of the growth and development of the character of individuals as well as nations. The apprenticeship of the workmen in the bleak quarries and in the forest, the advancement of the fellow crafts to more agreeable labors upon the temple, at the completion of which they were promised the proud title of master, and be endowed with its high privileges, all portray most vividly the universal law of human advancement. The condition upon which those ancient craftsmen were to receive their crowning honors and the infallible word which would enable them to travel to foreign countries and receive master's wages was predicated upon two propositions. First, they would wait until the temple was completed, and second, if then found worthy, they were to receive it, otherwise they would not. Ignorance, indolence, and passion The three murderers of human progress made it impossible for those ancient workmen to realize their ambition. The truth was hidden until future generations, freed from the destructive forces, could emerge from darkness into the light and there receive it. The infinitely wise Master has seen fit not to entrust such a wonderful secret to the irresponsible custody of those who cannot master themselves or control the appetites of their own mortal natures. Is the Word truly lost to the world? The sacred Word, which we believe has some mystical power and enfolds the generative forces of the universe, of which it was said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God." We believe that the Word exists in the universe, but hidden from the eyes and understanding of those who seek it not. It is working with its magical powers to bring men to a knowledge of the eternal truths of the fatherhood of God, of the brotherhood of man, and the immortality of the human soul. For the Spirit, speaking through Isaiah, the great Judean prophet, said, "I have sworn myself, the word is gone out of my mouth in righteousness, and shall not return, that unto me every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall swear." That the infallible word is endowed with the potency to accomplish its mission is certain, for it is written in the book of law. For the word of God is quick and powerful, and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even the divided asunder of soul and spirit, and of the joints and marrow, and is the discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. Speculative Masonry holds out the hope that a knowledge of this word is within the reach of everyone who shall complete the temple and prepare himself to receive it. One of the great utterances which has kept hope burning in the breast of men and lighted the pathway of benighted humanity is found in the sentence, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." The true Mason should be, from the time of his initiation as an entered apprentice to the time at which he receives the full fruition of Masonic light, an investigator, a laborer in the quarry, the forest, and upon the temple, whose reward is to be a knowledge of the truth. When the temple of his character is completed, he is to receive a priceless treasure, the true word of a Master Mason, a magical word in which is enfolded the hidden mysteries of the universe, a word which serves as a passport through all boundless realms of that undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns. In order to prepare to receive the word, the first necessary step is to circumscribe the desires and keep the passions within due bounds. There are three principal steps in Masonry. They typify youth, manhood, and old age, and are symbolized by the 3 degrees and by the 3 grand chambers of the temple: the ground floor, the middle chamber, and the Holy of Holies. Youth, with its exuberance of life in which material things are exalted and the spiritual forces lie dormant. Here you see the man as nature made him, with no other resources than his physical strength, a man neither naked nor clad, barefoot nor shod, blindfolded and in bonds, penniless and destitute. He also symbolizes the great, dumb, inarticulate masses of the profane, blinded by superstition and defenselessness through ignorance, poor, humiliated, dumb, and blind, yet instinctively longing for the light. In the second step, that of manhood, one learns the necessity of knowledge and of truth, which alone can free him from the vices and vicissitudes of his nature and constitute him a king over creation and master over himself. He learns that it is by prudence, fortitude, temperance, and justice, not by rashness or desperation, excess, or wild revenge, that he can escape from darkness and be brought into the light of eternal truth. The third step brings one to old age, with its ripe experience and deep reflections. Here the trained mind is embedded to discriminate between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, virtue and vice. And as he stands upon the brow of the western hill, by the side of the sprig of acacia, freed from his vices, he surveys universal nature, its transfusion of light and life, and receives assurance of a life beyond the grave. He realizes and understands that God is the Father of all, and that his fellows are his brothers. Finally, he sees man rising triumphant from the sordid earth, freed from its passions, vices, ignorance, and darkness, illuminated by truth, whose light is love, symbolizing a final resurrection in which he shall reflect the true and living image of God. Is it not time to complete the glorious temple, so long delayed by the barbaric forces of darkness, and receive the priceless heritage promised to our fathers? If we are to do so, we must turn again and again to our ancient grand masters for guidance and to the sacred book of law for instruction. God is supremely merciful, loving, tender, and infinitely patient. As Masons, we are taught to practice these virtues toward mankind and not to expect immediate perfection among humanity. We must realize that the soul is constantly struggling amid clouds of error, of failures and shortcomings, that it struggles upward amid all the impediments of sense and the obstructions of the passions. The true Mason should not judge rashly or hastily. He knows that often what may appear to the eye as a scar is but a wound won on some hard-fought battlefield where honor, justice, and truth triumphed. No one can have a right to think meanly of his race without thinking meanly of himself. Masonry teaches that no single fault can serve as a test of the whole nature of the man and the whole course of his life. Masonry understands that the whole scheme of human progress is predicated upon the law that humanity rises by using their dead selves as stepping stones to higher things. It therefore inculcates the sublime principles that while we may all be imperfect, we are to continue the struggle for the attainment of virtue and honor and of truth, with the assurance that in the end it may be achieved when the immortal temple of character will be completed in all its parts and be dedicated to the glory of the supreme architect of the universe. Therefore, among the first lessons taught is that man should square his actions by the square of virtue toward all mankind, more especially a brother Mason, that a man should be charitable, patient, helpful to his brother, and be filled with loving kindness. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. Have you never seen a youngster who had gone and stumped his toe, and was sitting by the roadside a-crying soft and low? A holding of his dusty foot, so hard and brown and bare, trying to keep from his eyes the tears that gathered there. You treat him sorter kind like, and the first thing that you know, he's up, off, and smiling clean forgot he stumped his toe. So it is along the road of human life you find a fellow traveling slow. Like as not, it's some poor cuss who has slipped and stubbed his toe. He was making swimming headway when he bumped into a stone, and his fellows kept hurrying onward and left him there alone. He's not sniffling, nor is he sobbing. He's too old for tears and cries, but he's grieving just as earnest, even though it comes in sighs. It does a lot of good sometimes to go a little slow and speak a word of kindness to the man who stubbed his toe. It is through labor, sacrifice, and suffering that man continues to rise toward the light in his search for the lost word. Therefore, Masonry dignifies labor and teaches its nobility. The axe, the mallet, the chisel, and the trowel are implements of honorable toil. They teach us that a life of labor is not a state of inferiority or degradation. It is only through a life of action, of industry, of sacrifice, that manhood is developed and the grace and charm of character is acquired. Masonry has taught us how a widow's son of the tribe of Nephlite, an humble worker in brass, became the chief architect of building, and through his integrity and fidelity to honor and duty his name has rung down the centuries as the illustrious Tyrann. Who are the nobles of the earth? The true aristocrats, who need not bow their heads to lords, nor doff to kings their hats. Who are they but the men of toil, the mighty and the free, whose hearts and hands subdue the earth, and compass all the sea? Who are they but the men of toil, who cleave the forest down, and plant amid the wilderness the hamlet and the town, who fight the battles, bear the scars, and give the world its crown of name, of fame, of history, and pomp of old renown. These claims no God are heartily, and scorn the knighting rod. Their coats of arms are noble deeds, their peering is from God. They take not from ancestral graves the glory of their names, but win as once their fathers won the laurel wreath of fame. It is through labor that the body is trained and the mind is disciplined. An indolent man remains in ignorance and is ever the slave of his appetites and passions. It is the worker who learns to subdue and circumscribe them and keep them within due bounds. Sacrifice is the supreme law of growth and advancement. The forest of Lebanon and the quarries of Baradatha were sacrificed that the beautiful temple might arise. If we hope to ascend toward light and truth and obtain the priceless heritage of the mystic word, it must be accomplished through such an agency. The high and important truth which Masonry teaches its members is not to search for mystical paths of escape from the necessity of toil, labor, or sacrifice, but to impress upon their minds and hearts that these constitute the grand highway of advancement, unfoldment, and development of character. Look out upon the beautiful world, how its landscapes smile in beauty and laugh in living streams, how its oceans roll and swell in majesty, and the mountains tower in strength and grandeur. View the gorgeous upholstery, its winding cloud stairs, its towering dome inlaid with suns, its golden portals of morning and evening. All make it a scene of transcendent beauty and loveliness. How did it reach its present state of beauty and perfection? Did it spring peacefully and without struggle into existence to float out before the enraptured vision of angels? No. Both divine law and science unite in declaring that it began in chaos, without form and void, while darkness wrapped the abyss of space and depth. Then through vast periods of fire and flood, of volcanic fury and awful convulsions, of swift upheaval and slow subsidence, through vast mystery epoch of conflict between inferior types of life, it has finally emerged in the splendid grandeur of cosmic grace and beauty which it wears today. Therefore, out of sacrifice and suffering, the universe took form and grace, and every atom of matter, whether busy in the unfoldment of a flower or the construction of a sun, obey this primal law. When man through labor and sacrifice has gained mastery over himself, he triumphantly presents the body with its desires circumscribed and its passions mastered as a living sacrifice. The mystic word in the midst of darkness thunders, "Let there be light," and the soul is illuminated by a glorified spirit which shall never, never die. He is crowned the victor, and through the lucidity of his sensibilities he can comprehend the glorious, harmonious of nature, radiant with the mysteries of eternal life. He then sees transfigured in the Word, which went forth in righteousness, never to return, that every knee shall bow and every tongue acclaim. We may now well believe that it is the power of the mystic Word that labors in the building of the temple of the soul. As in the beginning it moves amid chaos upon the face of the waters and said, "Let there be light." Our ancient Grand Masters have given us a fitting symbol of this great work. They constructed a temple which shall forever be associated with the worship of the one true and living God. From the brow of Mount Mora on which the structure arose, they have touched for good all succeeding time. The sound of the axes in the forest of Lebanon and the chisels and mallets in the quarries of Baradatha have been transmuted into the music of humanity, and the polished stones of white marble which they build into the walls but typify the living stones of that mighty, invisible, spiritual temple which is slowly rising in the earth and shall stand at last eternal in the heavens. The Temple of Solomon was built a visible symbol of a loftier temple, a grander temple, which time can never bronze over with years, and on which destruction beams shall beat in vain, the temple of the soul, the shrine of the infinite deity, the temple of an indwelling God. The temple erected by Solomon was the wonder of its time. In order to provide space enough which to erect the huge mass of Mount Moriah was enclosed in a wall springing from the valley below and rising higher than our loftiest spire. The crest was then cut down and the space filled in, and on the mighty pedestal the structure arose. Within were 3 paved courts, one rising above another, and each separated from the other by marble walls or balustrades, and approached only by great gates, famous throughout the world for their magnificence. Overall, in the central space stood this sanctuary built of blocks of white unblemished marble, rising from a higher level than the highest court and surmounted by a dome overlaid with burnished gold and flashing with golden spikes. The glory and crown of the whole terrace structure. There it stood, flashing regal in the sunlight, dazzling the eyes of all who looked upon it, the greatest and most material achievement in the history of Israel. But stately and magnificent as it was, it but symbolized a grander and more wondrous temple, the temple of the human soul, a sublimer creation that ever rose on earth, a higher expression of creative skill, not only than the temple of Solomon, but also than the temple of the material universe. The soul possesses more resources of design. More intricate and wonderful harmonious are displayed in it than in the interplay of suns and systems. Orion, sculpted in light on the black walls of space, fades into a mere firefly or pageant when compared to this matchless temple, which sprung from the soul of the infinite, is robbed with his own beauty and majesty and involved with his own immortality. Not only is the temple grander in structure and sublimer in outline than the temple built by Solomon, but it transcends it in its nature. The temple of Solomon had to stand as he built it. It could not enlarge itself. It could not enhance the stately ornamentation with which he had beautified it. It could not lift its mighty dome to the sky. And when its massive walls and polished pillars began to yield to the touch of time, it could not repair its waste or fill in its losses. But the living temple of the soul does all this. It enlarges, it sweeps and sway, and even builds the imperfect work of the past into statelier achievements of the future. But do you think we have yet seen its highest achievements and its qualities robed in their brightest glory? Why, we have just begun to mount the steps of the portico of this temple and to catch dim visions of the transcendent glories within. Language is of far too small a compass to voice its divinest harmonies, and only when transported from this imperfections of earth we shall stand amid the circumstances and scenery potent to awaken its latent susceptibilities. Shall we ever know the slumbering yet wondrous powers and capacities of the human soul? The Temple of Solomon, however stately, imposing, and magnificent, was a temple built with hands, and therefore built only for time. Though built of cedar and stone, silver and gold, though the shrine was glorified with rich and costly elaboration, though it flashed like a constellation of precious stones in the oriental sunlight, though it was the center of a nation, unity, and the symbol of a nation's power, where is it now? Not one stone is left standing upon the other. There was something sad and mournful in the successive revelations uncovered by the engineers of the Palestine Exploration Fund. When sinking shafts and opening galleries along the walls of the ancient Temple of Jerusalem, as they went down, they came upon the remains of masonry, indicated the successive epochs of rebuilding and just as clearly the successive epochs of destruction which had taken over it. They came first upon the ruins of the work which was done 3 or 4 centuries ago by the Sultan Suleiman. Lower down, they came upon the ruins of the constructive work which was ordered by Justina. Deeper down and upon a lower historic strata, they came upon the ruins and the work of the age of Herod the Great. Still deeper down, they came upon the original foundations of King Solomon's temple. full 70 feet below the surface and resting upon the rocky slopes of Mount Mora. And in the lowest angle of the temple area, they found the original cornerstone, untarnished by time, unstained by mold, the same stone that Isaiah the prophet was probably looking upon, or at least had in mind when he uttered the great messianic prophecy, "Behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone." Thus from the bottom upward may be traced the footprints of the destruction as, age after age, it leveled those successive temples to the dust. But the temple which that ancient and gorgeous structure but symbolizes shall never be overtaken by destruction, but shall advance on in widening power and increasing beauty and glory forever. The soul is immortal and therefore can never die. The longer it lives, the intenser it lives. It is an ever-growing, ever-expanding temple, a living temple which, when at last it shall thrust aside this mortal scaffolding, shall mount upward forever. Think of a year of spiritual building in paradise, what grace and beauty it will bring to the temple of character. But think of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Think of the difference between a spiritual temple garnished and beautified by 10 millenniums of celestial construction as compared to a temple just laying its foundation and beginning to uprear its walls in the brief scene of temple building which we call human life. Contemplate the human soul mounting up amid the circumstances and scenery of eternal being, the intellect forever expanding with richer and yet richer ingathering of knowledge, wiser yet wiser, happy and yet happier, holier and yet holier. Now towering beyond the reach of the archangel, now mounting into those supernal atmospheres that burn with the footsteps of the Sephron, onward and upward and Godward forever. O glorious temple, worthy of the conception and handiwork of a God, forever shalt thou stand, thy windows flooded with the glory of an uncreated day, the altars fragrant with the incense of fraternal love and joy, while beneath thy translucent dome shall roll and reverberate forever the transcendent anthems and harmonies of the lost word, which, flashing with living light, shall ever and still ever uncover and reveal the hitherto unsuspected glories that lie hidden in the mighty name and nature of God. Okay, brothers, that concludes this oration by past Grandmaster Jewel Lightfoot. And, I'll be picking up some things like that. I think I've got his Grandmaster address that I'll be putting on here shortly. So if you hadn't subscribed, go ahead and do that already. And that sucker will download when I update it, shortly after I update it. So till next time, brothers, this is Rhit Moore with Fort Worth 148. Have a good one.